Have you ever found yourself, maybe at a party or just waiting somewhere, maybe even scrolling online, and you see someone you'd kind of like to talk to,
Hmm.
but then nothing? Your mind just goes blank. You freeze up, can't think of a single thing to say to just start.
Oh, absolutely. That moment, it's incredibly common, that hesitation right before you actually say something,
Yeah.
where all the potential awkwardness just feels huge.
Yeah, like saying the wrong thing, or maybe they just won't respond.
Exactly. And look, if you feel that way, you're definitely not alone.
Not at all. Actually, the source material we're diving into today really highlights that. It puts some pretty surprising numbers on it.
It really does. It talks about research showing just how many people struggle with this, even, native English speakers. It found that 2 out of 3 Americans actually find small talk uncomfortable.
Wow, 2 out of 3.
Mhm.
So chances are, if you feel awkward, you're in good company.
And it goes even further. The source also mentions that a staggering 70% of people would rather just sit in silence than be the one to start a conversation.
70%. Just think about that. Choosing silence over talking to someone new.
It says a lot, doesn't it, about how big that initial hurdle feels.
It really does. All those potential moments, meeting someone interesting, making a connection, maybe finding an opportunity, just missed because of that feeling. But here's where it gets interesting. The source immediately flips that. It talks about the dread before versus the feeling after.
That contrast is really key. The source makes a strong point that when you do push past that reluctance, when you actually start the chat, you almost always feel better afterwards.
Always.
Almost always. And feeling better isn't necessarily because you suddenly made a best friend. Sometimes it's just, the relief, like, okay, I did it, the world didn't end, or just the small positive feeling of having connected, even for a moment.
So the anxiety is mostly before you start, not during or after the actual chat.
Often, yes. The anticipation can be worse than the reality.
Which brings us to, I think, the most empowering idea
Hmm.
from this source material we're looking at. Starting conversations. It's not some magical gift you either have or you don't.
Exactly. It's presented very clearly as a skill, something you can learn.
And that changes everything, doesn't it? Thinking of it as a skill.
It really does. It shifts your mindset completely. Instead of, oh, I'm just awkward, it becomes, okay, this is something I can practice and get better at, like learning an instrument or riding a bike. You don't expect to be perfect straight away.
Right. You wouldn't pick up a guitar and expect to nail a solo on day one. There are steps, practice.
Precisely. There are techniques to learn, you practice them, you might feel clumsy at first, but you improve over time. It builds confidence.
And that's exactly what we're doing in this deep dive. We're digging into the source material to pull out that practical side. We're unpacking the actual toolkit it offers, the strategies you can use to get past that 70% statistic and start talking to people. Naturally, confidently. And, improve your English fluency along the way, if that's a goal.
Yeah, we're going to break down the specific approaches, the how-tos, so you feel more equipped next time that moment happens.
Okay, so let's dig into that challenge and, I guess, the opportunity a bit more. We know it's hard for lots of people. Why is that? Why is there this widespread discomfort, this preference for silence?
Well, the source doesn't give us like a deep psychoanalysis of everyone's fear, but the numbers themselves are really powerful. Just
Yeah.
knowing that 2/3 find it uncomfortable and 70% avoid starting, it normalizes it, right?
Mhm.
It tells you, okay, this isn't just me being weird, this is common. And that validation itself can actually lessen the anxiety a bit. It's not some personal failing.
It takes the pressure off, yeah.
Yeah.
It makes it feel less like I'm broken and more like, okay, this is a common hurdle.
Exactly. And then there's that contrast we mentioned, the feeling before versus after. The source really hammers this home.
That you almost always feel better afterward.
Right. Because the dread is usually about imagining the worst case scenarios, What if they ignore me? What if I sound stupid? What if I run out of things to say? Our minds are great at catastrophizing.
Tell me about it.
But the reality of a quick, simple exchange is rarely that bad. Often, it's perfectly fine, maybe even pleasant.
And even if it's just okay, you still did it, you took
Yeah.
the step, that's an accomplishment in itself, right? It builds a little bit of proof that you can do it.
Precisely. It chips away at the idea that the barrier is some fundamental lack of ability. It reinforces that it's often psychological, based on fear, which loops right back to it being a skill.
A skill you can practice and improve. You're not stuck being bad at it.
You have agency. You can actively work on it. You can
Right.
learn the techniques.
It's a much more positive frame. Okay, so if it's a skill, let's get into the how. The source provides this This toolkit, basically.
Yeah, it structures the whole thing really well. It breaks down different ways to start a conversation into 7 key types. Think of it like having different tools you can pull out depending on the situation.
7 different approaches. Okay, what's the first one? The absolute ground floor.
The most basic level is just simple greetings.
Like,
Yeah.
literally just saying hello.
Pretty much. The source says this is the easiest, lowest pressure way in, just acknowledging someone's there. The examples are super simple. Hi, I'm Jake. Or maybe, hello, I'm Emma. I don't think we've met before.
Okay, the second one adds a tiny bit more context. Why do these work? They seem almost too simple.
Their main job is just to open the door, to signal, I'm friendly, I'm open to talking. Saying your name invites them to say theirs. That's the most basic exchange. And adding, I don't think we've met, is useful in specific places, like you said, maybe a class or a meetup. It clarifies you're starting a new interaction. It works because it requires almost nothing in return, just a simple reply.
It's like the minimal viable conversation starter. Okay, tool number 1, simple greeting. What's number 2?
Number 2 uses what's around you. It's called situational questions.
Right, so asking about something that's happening right then and there.
Exactly that. You use the immediate environment or the shared experience. The examples the source gives are things like, has the bus been late today?
Yeah.
If you're both at the stop. Or, what did you think of the last speaker? If you're at a conference.
Okay, I see. So you're latching on to something you both are experiencing. Why is that effective?
Because it's instantly relevant. You're both dealing with the possibly late bus, or you both just sat through the same talk. The context is obvious, making it super easy for the other person to understand and answer. It's also safe, neutral ground. You're not asking anything personal, just commenting on the shared reality. It feels much more natural than just pulling a random topic out of thin air.
Yeah, the situation gives you the opening line. Makes sense. Okay, what's the third category in the toolkit?
This one moves a little bit beyond the situation itself. It's light personal questions.
Okay, showing some interest in the person, but keeping it, well, light, casual.
Precisely. The idea is to learn just a little bit about them, maybe find some common ground, but without getting too nosy or personal right away. The source gives the classic examples. Where are you from and what do you do for work?
Yeah, you hear those all the time when meeting people. They feel pretty standard.
They are standard, and for good reason. Most people expect these kinds of questions and are generally comfortable answering them. They're stepping stones. Maybe you discover you're from the same area, or their job connects to something you know about. But the key, as the source stresses, is light. This isn't an interrogation. It's just gathering basic info to build a connection.
Initial building blocks. Okay. What about if you do spot something you share right off the bat?
That's the fourth category, and it's a really good one. Common ground observations.
So pointing out something you notice you both have in common.
Exactly. You spot something, maybe they're wearing a t-shirt of a band you love, or you recognize them from somewhere, and you comment on that shared thing. The examples are like, hey, I love that band too, or we're in the same class, right?
Oh, I like that. It feels less like starting from zero. Why is that so powerful?
Because it creates an instant connection, that feeling of, oh, you too. It builds immediate rapport. You already have a topic you both likely care about or share. It feels less like an interview and more like a shared discovery. It gives the conversation momentum right from the start.
Like finding a shortcut to connection. Cool. Okay, what about starting things off on a positive note?
That brings us nicely to number 5, genuine compliments.
Just saying something nice.
Yep. Starting with a positive observation, but the key word here, emphasized in the source, is genuine. The examples are specific things like, that's a really nice jacket, or maybe after a talk, I loved your presentation, really clear.
So specific is important, not just you look nice or something vague.
Absolutely crucial. A specific compliment shows you've actually noticed something and genuinely appreciate it. Nice jacket means you looked at it. Really clear presentation means you listened. Vague praise can sound insincere, like you're just saying it to say something, but a specific, genuine compliment that usually makes someone feel good, it's disarming, and it gives them an easy way to respond, like, oh, thanks, I got it, or thanks, I'm glad it came across clearly. It warms things up immediately.
Genuine and specific. Got it.
Okay.
Okay, that's 5. Simple greetings, situational questions, light personal questions, common ground, genuine compliments. What are the last 2?
Number 6 isn't so much about what you ask initially, but how you ask it to keep things moving. It's open-ended questions.
Ah, the opposite of yes-no questions, questions that need a longer answer.
Exactly. The whole point is to invite more detail, get the other person talking more. This gives you more to respond to and keeps the conversation from dying out. The examples are things like, what do you think of the event so far? Instead of, are you enjoying the event? Or, what kind of things do you usually do for fun? Instead of, do you have hobbies?
Right. Are you enjoying the event?
hmm
Could just get a yeah. But what do you think prompts them to actually share their thoughts?
Precisely. A closed question like, did you like it, often gets a one-word answer. An open-ended one like, what did you think, invites opinions, examples, feelings. What kind of things do you do for fun? Gets them describing activities, maybe telling a story. These questions generate much more conversational fuel. You get more information, more potential follow-up points. They're vital for actually sustaining the interaction.
Keeps the engine running. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, that's 6. What's the 7th and final part of the toolkit?
The 7th isn't exactly an opening line itself, but it's what has to happen immediately after the opener for the conversation to actually, well, become a conversation. It's follow-up and active listening.
So showing you're actually paying attention and interested in their reply.
Absolutely. It's about signaling engagement, showing you heard them and encouraging them to say more. This is where it shifts from just starting to actually having an exchange. The source gives examples of follow-up phrases like, oh, really? Tell me more about that. Or, me too. That sounds interesting.
So it's not just waiting for your turn to talk again.
Definitely not. Active listening means really focusing on what they're saying, understanding it, processing it, and then showing you've heard them with verbal cues like, oh, really? Or nonverbal nods, and asking relevant follow-up questions based on what they just said. Tell me more is a direct invitation for them to elaborate. Me too. Validates their experience and builds connection. This part is critical. You could have the best opening line ever, but if you don't listen and respond, it just fizzles out. This turns it into a real dialogue.
Right. The opener gets the door open, but follow-up and listening are how you actually walk through it and start exploring the room. Okay, so that's the 7-part toolkit. Simple greetings, situational questions, light personal questions, common ground, genuine compliments, open-ended questions, and crucial follow-up and active listening. That gives us a lot to work with. How does the source suggest actually putting these into practice? It mentions real scenarios.
Yeah, exactly. The theory is great, but applying it is key. So the source gives concrete examples of using these tools in common situations.
Okay, let's look at those. What about the classic scenario? At a party. What's a good opener there, according to the source?
A really common and effective one they suggest is, so how do you know Sarah? Assuming Sarah is the host.
That makes total sense. Why does that one work so well at a party?
It's brilliant because it taps right into the shared context. Everyone there presumably knows the host. So it's situational. We're both at Sarah's party, and it's a light personal question. How do you know her? The answer usually involves a little story. We work together. We went to college together. She's my cousin. That instantly gives you information about the person and a natural topic to ask more about. It's low pressure, relevant, and almost always starts a little narrative.
It uses the situation perfectly.
Okay.
How about a different vibe? In the office.
For colleagues, the standard example is, how was your weekend?
Ah, the Monday morning classic. Why is that one a good fit for the workplace?
It's just a very common, polite, low-stakes way to connect, especially at the start of the week. It's kind of a light personal question mixed with a situational one referencing the shared rhythm of the work week. People usually have a brief, standard answer ready. It was good, relaxing, or pretty busy, actually. It allows for a quick, friendly check-in, maintains good relations, but doesn't demand deep sharing. It just breaks the ice easily.
Keeps things friendly and acknowledges the shared routine.
Oh.
Okay, what about when you're out of your usual circles, like while traveling?
For travel, the source suggests things like, where are you from? Or maybe any local cafe recommendations.
Where are you from? Definitely hear that one a lot. Traveling. Fits the light personal category. And asking for recommendations is a great situational question.
Exactly. Where are you from is almost expected when you meet fellow travelers or locals in a new place. It opens up chat about home, travel plans, etc. Asking for recommendations, like for a cafe, is practical and situational. It shows you want to engage with the place, implies a shared interest, maybe in coffee or local spots, and it's open-ended enough, any recommendations, that they might give you more than just a name. Maybe describe the place, which gives you more to talk about. They work because they're highly relevant to the context of being somewhere new.
It shows how you pick the right tool for the job, depending on where you are. Now, the source also specifically talks about starting conversations in a place with its own rules online.
Yeah, that's such a big part of interacting now, right? And it's different. You don't have the body language, the tone, the shared physical space. So the source gives some specific tips for starting chats online.
Right, typing is different from talking.
Yeah.
What are the key pointers for online conversations?
4 main things. First, always introduce yourself with context. Second, ask a friendly question. Third, be polite and use full sentences. And fourth, a very direct piece of advice. Don't just say hi.
Okay, let's focus on that last one. Don't just say hi. Why is that such bad advice online? According to the source, it seems so simple.
Well, think about it from the receiver's end. A message pops up that just says hi. From someone you might not know, you have zero context. Who is this person? Why are they messaging me? What do they want? It puts all the work on the receiver to figure it out or to drag the conversation out of the sender. It often feels really low effort, maybe even a bit suspicious or just lazy.
Yeah, it's like getting a knock on the door, opening it, and the person just stands there silently. Okay, so hi alone is out. What's the recommended alternative structure? The source gives an example, right?
Yes, it gives a really clear example that pulls all the other tips together. Hi, I'm Emma from Italy. I saw your post about English podcasts. Do you have any recommendations?
Okay, let's break that down. How does that sentence follow all the online advice?
Perfectly. It starts with the greeting, hi, then immediately, context. I'm Emma from Italy. That's introducing yourself with context. Tells them who you are. Then it gives the reason for contact, the common ground. I saw your post about English podcasts. Explains why you're reaching out, references something they did, shows you're not random. Then it asks the friendly question. Do you have any recommendations? Clear, relevant, easy to answer. And the whole thing uses full sentences and is polite.
Wow, okay. That one sentence does so much more work than just hi. It gives the other person everything they need to know to understand or respond easily. It's respectful.
Absolutely. It turns a potential annoyance into a clear, polite invitation to connect about a shared interest. It shows you put a tiny bit of thought into it. It's a great example of applying those toolkit principles, introduction, common ground, open question, but tailored for online.
These examples are super helpful. But, knowing the tools is one thing. Actually using them, especially when you feel nervous, that's the hard part. The source mentions practice sections, like mini role plays. We can't do that here. But let's talk about why that practice is so valuable and how these tools apply to the scenarios they suggest, like being in a coffee shop or at a hiking meetup.
Right. The source definitely implies that reading isn't enough. You got to practice.
Mhm.
And those scenarios, coffee shop, hiking group, they're great because they're pretty common, fairly low pressure situations where you could try these things out.
So how would you use the toolkit if you decided, okay, I'm going to practice starting a chat at this coffee shop?
Well, you'd be looking around, using your awareness. Maybe you use a situational question about the queue. Wow, popular spot today, huh? Or maybe you notice someone reading a book you know that's common ground observation. Oh, I loved that book. What do you think so far? Or maybe genuine compliment. Excuse me, I really like your scarf. The point of thinking through these scenarios, even just mentally, is it gets your brain used to spotting opportunities and having a few potential lines ready. It makes it less likely you'll freeze up completely.
And for something like a hiking meetup, where you already know you share an interest in hiking.
That's even easier. Common ground is built in, so situational questions are great. Have you done this trail before? Or the weather turned out nice, didn't it? Light personal. How long have you been part of this group? You could even use a compliment about their gear if it feels natural. Those look like serious hiking boots. The scenarios are prompts to get you thinking, okay, which tools fit here? It's about recognizing the chances to apply the strategies, not memorizing scripts.
Building that instinct for finding an opening. And the source has a really specific, actionable tip for practicing this, the repeat out loud tip.
Yeah, this is a simple but really effective suggestion. It literally advises saying these kinds of phrases and sentences out loud by yourself. The reason given is that it helps your brain and tongue work together.
Helps your brain and tongue work together. What does that actually mean? Why is saying stuff out loud helpful?
When you physically say the words, you're doing more than just thinking them. You're forming the sounds, feeling the rhythm of the sentence, hearing yourself speak English. It builds like linguistic muscle memory. The phrases start to feel more familiar, less awkward coming out of your mouth. So when you're in a real situation saying, what did you think of the presentation? Feels a bit more automatic. You've practiced the physical act. This frees up some mental bandwidth because you're not struggling quite as much to just form the sentence. You can focus more on the person and the interaction. It makes the language feel more natural to you.
So it's not just memorization. It's making the speaking part feel more comfortable and smooth.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Let's wrap this up by summarizing the main takeaways the source emphasizes. These feel like the core principles to keep in mind.
Yeah, it boils everything down to some key actionable advice, sort of the foundational mindset and behaviors for getting better at this. There are 5 main ones.
Okay, what's takeaway number 1?
Smile, relax, and make eye contact.
Right, the nonverbals. Super important. Why are these highlighted?
Because they communicate so much before you even speak. A smile makes you look friendly, approachable. Relaxing helps you seem more comfortable, which puts others at ease. Eye contact shows you're engaged, interested, and confident. These signals basically say, hey, I'm open and safe to talk to. They create a much more positive first impression and make your words land better.
Sets the stage. Okay, what's a second key principle?
Keep your topics light and neutral at first.
We touched on this with the types of questions. Stick to safe ground initially. Exactly. It's a reminder not to dive into anything too heavy, controversial, or deeply personal right away. Politics, religion, money problems, probably best to avoid those when you're just starting a chat with someone new. The goal is just to make a connection, have a brief, pleasant exchange. Keep it light, keep it comfortable for both of you.
Build rapport before you get into the heavy stuff. Makes sense. Third takeaway.
Use open-ended questions to keep the chat flowing.
Coming back to those again, they're clearly important.
They really are. This takeaway stresses that they're not just for opening, they're essential for continuing the conversation. They're what prevents the awkward silences after the first exchange. Asking questions that invite more than a yes or no keeps the dialogue moving, shows you're still interested, and gives the other person space to share more. It's a key technique for sustaining interaction.
Keeps things from fizzling out. What's the 4th principle?
This one addresses the big fear directly. Don't fear awkwardness, practice builds confidence.
This feels like maybe the most crucial message for anyone hesitant to try. It's okay if it's awkward.
It's more than okay. The source frames it as a normal, expected part of learning. Feeling awkward doesn't mean you failed or you're bad at it. It just means you're practicing. Every time you push through that discomfort, even if the conversation feels a bit clunky, that's the practice. And it's precisely that practice, navigating those awkward moments, that slowly builds real confidence. The fear lessens the more you do it.
So awkwardness isn't failure, it's just practice in action. I like that. And the final key takeaway?
Number 5 is, every small conversation is real progress.
That's about perspective, right? Don't dismiss the little chats.
Exactly. It's encouragement. Getting comfortable, especially in another language, is a process. This point says, value every interaction, that quick 2-sentence chat about the weather, the compliment you gave someone, the question you asked at the meetup. They all count. Each one is a tiny success, a bit more practice, a small step forward. They all add up over time to build fluency and confidence. Celebrate those small wins.
It reframes small talk as valuable practice, not just pointless chatter. Okay. We've covered a lot: why starting conversations is hard, the 7 specific tools in the toolkit, how to use them in different places, including online, the importance of practice like saying things out loud, and these 5 key principles.
Yeah, the source gives a really solid practical roadmap, from understanding the fear to having concrete things you can actually do.
And the big message is, it is doable. It's a skill you can learn.
Yeah.
So you've got the tools now from this source material. The next step is, well, trying them out. Remember that tip about practicing out loud? It sounds simple, but it can really help make the words feel more natural when you need them.
And be kind to yourself through the process. Expect some awkward moments, they're part of it. And really try to see every little chat, no matter how short, as a step forward.
So let's leave you with a final thought, spanning off from what we've discussed. The source suggests that pushing past the awkwardness almost always feels better, and that a simple start, said with growing confidence, can open doors, maybe to friendship, maybe opportunity, maybe even bigger life changes if you're learning English for travel or work. So the question is, if starting conversations is a skill you can build with practice, what new door might be waiting for you to open, maybe even this week, just by taking that first small step and starting one conversation? Worth thinking about, isn't it?